Couple of seconds. Okay, we're online. I'll start speaking in Montenegrin and then we'll continue. Dobro večer svima. Sa nama je večeras veoma poseban gost, Marko Brnović ili Mark Brnovich, čovjek koji je trenutno čovjek crnogorskog porijekla koji obavlja najvisočiju funkciju u američkoj politici. Mark je moj prijatelj i čovjek koji mnogo cijeni svoje porijeklo, voli da dolazi u Crnu Goru. Što se tiče profesionalno njegove karijere, Mark je cijelog svog života u da kažem, pravnom sektoru, u sudskom i od 2015. zaslužio već 2 puta povjerenje građana Arizone koji su ga direktno na izborima izabrali za vrhovnog državnog tužioca ili pravobranioca. S Markom ćemo večeras razgovarati o vrijednostima, o karakteru. Pričat ćemo o tome koliko je karakter, koliko su vrijednosti bitne za njega lično i za njegov liderski put. Mark, I think you were able to understand completely almost everything what I have just said, so I will not repeat it in English. Thank you very much for...
Thank you very much. I molim vas, pozdravite sve moje prijatelje tamo.
Thank you very much. So Mark, I'll start immediately by thanking you for sparing some time to talk with us tonight about very important subjects that are of great importance for Montenegro. Things like values, character-driven leadership, because as you know that my mission is to influence leadership and political culture in the country. So I want to start immediately by asking you a question about values, about your personal values and the values that you consider most important for you personally. Can you share something with us? Where do these values come from? Family, education, you served in military. So if you can just pinpoint some of those milestones in your career, in your life that have influenced your system of values.
I think that your character or your values reveal themselves whenever there's pressure or a tough situation. And so I think that your values come from not only your family, but those experiences. As you mentioned, going through the officer's basic course, being in the military, you're around senior leaders and you pick up things. But before that, even the decision to join the military. Well, that was part of the values I was brought up as a child, that we have to have honor, we have to have integrity, and we have to give something back. One of the things about being a first-generation American, when you alluded to my Montenegrin heritage and roots in that, is that, even my wife, she's a federal judge, she does citizenship ceremonies. And one of the things that she says that I think is so beautiful that I now copied from her is to remind people that we all came from somewhere, so we shouldn't ever forget where we or our relatives came from to come to America. But then we must also never forget why we became Americans. And it's a decision because almost, so many people here have come from somewhere else. And so I always try to stay grounded to my roots. And, one of the things about, growing up in, the Orthodox community here and, growing up with Yugoslavian, Montenegrin values is that, for good or bad, and I think this, is that we are taught how important honor is and how important our reputation is. And, you hear a lot of things, especially growing up that, once you lose your reputation, you can never buy it back, and how important it is to maintain that honor no matter what's going on, and that integrity. And so, from a very early age in my entire life, the values of being honest, people say you have integrity. So even if people disagree with you, even if people say, look, I'm a Republican politically here in America. So people sometimes say, oh, he's a Republican, he believes this, or, oh, he did this, we filed a lawsuit, or I put someone in prison, or we did something. People can disagree with me on the issues. But I think that if you look at the way we've conducted our office, the way we've explained things, we have been intellectually consistent. And so I always tell folks that you gotta You got to have honesty. You got to have integrity. It's something you can't buy, and once you lose, you can't buy it back. And so it's important to maintain that. And there's an old line that he who steals your purse steals nothing of real value, but he who steals, or your reputation steals something that you can never get back. And so I think that's really, really important. And the other thing, of course, is that, and I don't know if this is a function of being first generation or, here, over in, Montenegro or over that part of the world, if your name ends in Ovich, you guys are all sons of bitches, right? I mean, so there's, it's not unusual, but here, especially in Arizona growing up, like there wasn't a lot of people that had, like Orthodox Church seemed really foreign to a lot of people, like our traditions and cultures, and having the priests with the long beards, and sometimes the vestments, the things they would wear, and so you learn that no one is going to give you anything. And I think this is true anywhere in the world, and you got to work really hard. And so just knowing that you got to work hard, and you got to stand up for your values, to have that courage. So it's a long way to go, and as you know, our people are very long-winded, but you got to have integrity and honesty. You got to have courage. You got to understand.
We lost you for a second there, your audio, but we see you still good. Thank you very much. It was a great answer. And the second question comes as a logical continuation of the first response, and this is how did those values, your personal values, affected the way how you implemented? What are the organizational values that you have been implementing since you've taken the office of the Attorney General of Arizona? What are some of the organizational values that you want to share with us, and how are those aligned with your personal individual values? Do you think it is important to have your personal values and organizational values align in order to fruitfully serve your community?
Well, I think that your personal values end up determining who you are. But I think in any organization, that no one agrees with everyone, 100% of the time. So you can't impose your values of right and wrong, let's say, like religious values on everyone else. But I do think that you need certain cultural values in any organization to make it run effectively and to reflect your values. So as you said at the beginning, I was elected Attorney General twice here in Arizona. I was also the state gaming in charge of all the gambling, before that. So I've run organizations. And so, those values you get growing up and doing what you've done. And then, you come to an organization like this where we have, more than 400 lawyers. We have criminal law, we have civil law, we defend the state when it gets sued, we provide advice to the government agencies. So we touch people's lives every day here. And so it's important that people that work here, even if they don't agree with you on politics or maybe, on other issues, they have to understand the core organizational values. And I always say that there's a few things that I tell every new lawyer, investigator, secretary, whoever is here. I tell them, one, you have to be a team player. And so that means that, a lot of times, there are people in any organization that all they care about is themselves and, getting their work done. They don't care about anybody else. And here, I always tell people, we are the state of Arizona. We are the state's biggest and most important law firm. So you have to work together as a team. You have to all support each other and, make sure that, the mission is getting accomplished. I also think that, too, going back to what I said earlier about personal values, is your reputation is everything. And I tell folks that when we go into court or we go somewhere, we go to a party, you go to your kid's school, when you say you work at the Attorney General's office, you have an instant amount of respect. And it's not just because you work for the government. You have respect because over the years, people that have worked here, people that my predecessors, many of them, most of them, had good reputations. And so you have this built-in pool of credibility. And I feel like we need to protect that for not only ourselves, so we have credibility and go to courtroom or we ask a judge for something or a jury for something, but then also that future generations have that. It's that whole notion of leaving a place better than you found it. And then the third thing is, I think it's really important to emphasize to everyone here is that get the mission done, accomplish your mission. We all have obstacles to overcome in life. There are a lot of things that, sometimes personal, sometimes professionally. I tell the story that I used to work at the Attorney General's office. I was a line level lawyer. And my office, they used to call it the broom closet. It was the smallest office in the building. In fact, it wasn't even in this building. It was in a different building. And so it was no windows, smallest office. Like I said, they call it the broom closet. And, less than 15 years later, 12 years later, I run for Attorney General. I'd never run for office, worked my butt off. And I end up now having the biggest office with the most windows. And so I don't think a lot of people foresaw that. But it was because I was taught to just focus on doing your job, doing it well, and everything will work out. And so, you accomplish the mission, you focus on your job. And so I didn't worry about, oh, no, I don't have any windows in my office. Oh, no, I have a small office. Oh, I don't have a parking spot. Whatever, there's always something. And, when you work somewhere that you have issues, oh, I don't get to take a long lunch hour, whatever it is. But the key is not that those obstacles or that maybe, things get put in your way. It's what you do with those challenges. And so, you can be a malcontent and, complain and bring everybody down, or you can sit there and say, you know what, no, I'm just going to do my job and do it well and everything will work out. And I know when I say that story, I know that there are a lot of people in other parts of the world, even people that, that I know, relatives, friends, family that had to live through World War II, had to live through communism, had to live through so much more that I'm experiencing in my life. But my point is that we all have obstacles, sometimes daily, sometimes major obstacles, sometimes structural obstacles, but it's up to us to respond, work hard, and get the job done.
I agree. The question is, like, we are now moving hierarchically. So we went from personal values to organizational values, and I want to talk about national values right now. You said very important thing that being American was a matter of choice for most of the people who have immigrant background like yourself. So if you can tell us something about some of the national values or the community values that you cherish the most there in Arizona, in the United States. And I will ask also the second part of the question that I wanted to ask as a separate question is that if you can do not a comparison, but if you can just point out or single out some of the values that you have learned, Montenegrin values that you think that traditional values or parts of the culture that you think can be beneficial for building a better, healthier leadership and political culture in our country that you liked so much, that you like to visit so much. So if it makes sense, I want you just, if you can for us, talk for the first part about the American values, and then just share with us some thoughts about Montenegro and Montenegrin national values and tradition that you think is valuable for the future.
First of all, one of the things, alluding to what I said earlier, is the thing about Americans, and I talk about this sometimes about America, is that, like, I could go to, right now, go live in Poland for the rest of my life, retire there and die there, and my obituary would say, the American who moved to Poland. When I was younger, I wanted to study in Japan. I could have gone to Japan and, become, a martial artist and study the culture and learn the language, but they would always consider me an outsider. I would always be the American in Japan. And the United States is unique because no matter who you are, where you come from, you can become an American. And we have, obviously, in America, the tradition where we don't have a national religion. We're not like some other places, that have a national church. And I know that in Montenegro, they're dealing with these issues right now, how the church and the national identity intersect. But we don't have that. We've never had a national church. We had people from different faiths, escaping the original pilgrims, religious persecution. And so we very strongly here in the United States value that religious freedom and, that independence to, be whatever faith you want, and how that kind of diversity makes us all stronger. And so we don't have a national religion. We don't have a common ethnic identity. It's not like Japan. It's not like China, where 90% of us, are the same ethnic identity and speak the same language. And so that makes us unique. And it also makes our founding documents kind of our sacred text, I would say. So when you look at like the Declaration of Independence, you look at the Constitution, those are the things that unites us. And those are the values that really are important to, so many Americans. The notion that we have a rule of law, that you have rules in place and that no person, they say no person is above the law. So whether you're the president of the United States or whether you're, a homeless person in the United States, you all are supposed to be treated equally for the law. And it's one of the reasons why, traditionally in the United States, you have like this lady justice with the scales and the justice system. There's a blindfold because justice is supposed to be blind. No matter how rich or poor you are, no matter where you come from, your ethnic background, everyone gets treated equally. There's no, not like even the old feudal system or even the system with, royalty and kings and queens, where they got to do, something else, everyone else, and everyone else had to be subject to a different set of rules. We here specifically rebelled against, the King George. And so, we wanted this system that maximized individual freedom. And, the notion is government, and this is an important distinction of different parts of the world, even with parliamentary systems of government. The United States was founded, and we try to keep the tradition that government does not give you rights. The government is here to secure rights. So this whole beginning concept that rights predate government, and this goes back to the notions of people like John Locke and other people, that the reason why people enter the social compact and form governments is to protect them and to protect their rights. And so there's a tricky balance, and sometimes I feel like we're losing a little bit of that, and especially historically, the states were supposed to be what we call the laboratories of democracy, and there was supposed to be, not every problem was supposed to have a national solution. And I worry a little bit that we're losing that Washington, D.C. or the federal government here is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it taxes more and does more things. And, that's kind of the antithesis of what the Constitution and the framers envisioned. But everyone, whether Republican or Democrat, has the spirit of individualism. And I think in the United States, most of us have a healthy distrust of big government.
Understand.
And then, the second part of that is, I think that in some ways, these are universal values in the sense that, from what I see and what I read, and, we're now getting Montenegrin TV. We can get the Montenegrin station here in the United States. There's like a TV package, and I watch the news. In fact, I've seen you sometimes on the news talking about the election, and I may say that you look good. I mean, you're looking good. You're sounding good.
Thank you.
But yeah, it does sound like you're upsetting a lot of people, but I guess that's good. But not going to win the Mr. Popular contest, I think. But that's okay.
Completely
okay.
correct.
You're sticking up for your values, but I think
my words.
One of the things that they say or you hear about, especially Montenegro, is if you get two Montenegrins in a room, you're going to get three opinions, and because everyone is always arguing, and a lot of times traditionally Montenegrins, even though they have the clan system, the chieftains, that sometimes there's a discussion of who's in charge, and when one person's in charge, sometimes people don't trust them, and so there's a healthy distrust of organization and sometimes government entities in Montenegro as well. But one of the things that I think that is so amazing about Montenegro, and as you said, we love to come there. My family loves to go there. And it's not just the great food, the great cheese, the great prosciutto, the great wine. As no one ever leaves anyone's house hungry or thirsty there. And everyone takes real pride in being a great host. And that's something that sometimes I forget here, but just that notion that we have to be good hosts to any of our guests. And the folks there, everywhere I've gone, have been great. And just really sharing that spirit. But the other thing that is good and bad about Montenegro culture is that, as you know, historically, Montenegro was a very warrior culture. There was always fighting, a lot of fighting going on. And so I think sometimes when you're a warrior culture and you have that tradition, that, you know, it's hard to evolve and change into we're going to be merchants and traders, and we're going to, you know, value economic competition instead of military competition. And so I think, and once again, it's maybe not my place to say, but I think because of those traditions of the, you know, honor and the military tradition, you know, that sometimes creates issues as people try to evolve and change, you know, into, you know, the rule of law and in a system that's, you know, more constitutionally or parliamentarily based. And so I think, but I do think that the amazing thing about Montenegro, as I said, is not just, you know, the amazing people and how great everyone there is as hosts, and, you know, the food, the wine, and just, you know, never walking away thirsty or hungry, but it's also the people that no matter who they are, they have that dignity and that sense of honor, that sense of tradition. And I mean, I love music, and I am absolutely convinced that's because that just came down culturally, because, you know, there was always records playing and people were always singing at church, and you had the gusla, and I never appreciated it maybe when I was younger, and now I wish I, you know, could play it, or, you know, and so you get a lot of that sense of, you know, loving life almost. It's a strange, I don't know if dichotomy is the right word, but maybe because there was so much conflict over the years with, you know, the Turks, you know, the Ottomans, excuse me, and the Austrians and the Germans, and even the internal fighting, that because of that constant like struggle or death being around the corner, that you love life more, you love, you know, music and arts, and, you know, and so I think that there's a beautiful balance there that a lot, unless you're in Montenegro, sometimes you can't appreciate it. I think sometimes outsiders can't appreciate it. They're not sure what to do about Montenegro.
You just spoke my mind. Yes, that's the reason that sometimes we need somebody from outside, just like yourself, looking at us and maybe seeing some positive sides of our collective mentality that we're not appreciating too much.
Well, I similar you. I look at like how gorgeous the coastline is, and, you know, you've got, you know, the sea there, the Adriatic Sea. You've got these amazing, beautiful mountains. You have people that know how to raise, you know, the best pigs and make the best goat cheese and make the best wine, and you know, you have all these things are going for Montenegro as a country, and it just seems like it's ready to take off.
I hope so. The last question, and I'm letting you off the hook, is about some maybe leadership stories or leadership or biographies, some leaders that you find inspiring the most. If you can single out some of them that you maybe met personally through your work, or somebody that you admire, some public personalities from history that affected the most your leadership journey. I know several of them, but I know that you will be mentioning them. So if you can single out some of the leaders that you look up to, who would that be?
Well, I think first and foremost in my kind of pantheon of leadership, I would have to begin with Barry Goldwater. You know, Barry Goldwater was an Arizona senator. He was very anti-communist, and, you know, when Arizona, especially was a small state, you know, we had people like Barry Goldwater who had an international reputation. It was very principled, very strong. One of the first early books I remember reading was Conscience of a Conservative, where Barry Goldwater is making the case for a more limited and constitutional form of government. And Barry Goldwater, throughout his entire life, you know, sometimes would curse, would swear, and he was authentic. He was who he was. And that's always kind of been my role model, even in government, that, you know, I shoot straight with people, and, you know, I'm not going to change who I am just because I want office. And I've seen this a lot in politics, a lot, that when people are in political office, they sometimes look to see what benefits them personally, or they act one way in public and one way in private. And I'm never like that. I will never be like that. I mean, I've got a great wife, I got great kids, and so I don't need politics to get any sort of value or worth. I do this because I'm trying to give back. And I think Barry Goldwater was the same way. He was going to tell you what you thought, would shoot straight with you. And so I think that any conversation for me ends with Barry Goldwater, and said he's written amazing books and amazing speeches. And just that continuation is Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was president when I was in high school here. And Ronald Reagan was a staunch anti-communist. And by the way, my family was very anti-communist. And so I remember Ronald Reagan talking about, the fact that, the Soviet Union was the evil empire. He was, supporting the solidarity workers, people like Lech Walesa in Poland, and, speaking truth to the power. And not a lot of people have done that in the United States. And people here, I remember I was in high school and part of my college years, people were like, oh my gosh, Ronald Reagan's terrible. He's going to start a war. There's protests all over Europe and, and all this stuff. And you know what? Because of his strength and his character and his leadership, we were able to, force essentially the collapse of the Soviet Union. Now, the other thing that Ronald Reagan was always great at, he was very inspirational. And one of the things about politics I always say is that Ronald Reagan was a positive person. If you look at his speeches, he always talked about that the best was yet to come, that the United States was a shining city on the hill, that we had to provide moral leadership in the world as well. And you never heard him say nasty things about other people, even his opponents. He would kind of make jokes, but even at his own expense. And he used to, one of the things he says that I tell people here, going back to what we were talking about earlier, is that Ronald Reagan used to say, it's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit. And I think that underpins the whole notion of let's be a team, let's just get stuff done. And so, Ronald Reagan would have to be up there. There are people also, though, that I never met, like John Wooden, who's a famous basketball coach at UCLA, wrote a bunch of books. He has this pyramid of success. And I find myself quoting John Wooden all the time, even though I never met him. And because the things he said, he took those principles of sports and applied them to life. He would say things, like, your failure to plan is failure to plan is planning to fail. Like he would say things like that would remind you how important, organization and teamwork is. And so, there are a lot of folks like that, the books you can read. I know that I just recently finished a book called The Captain Class, and it was about looking at sports teams and why certain sports teams became dynasties. And, it looked at it and it went through a bunch of them. I think the Yugoslavian water polo team almost made the cut, but it just was out of the running when it had its run in the 70s. But he looks at different sports teams, all over the world, soccer, football teams and American football teams. And there's common characteristics where they had a leader, a captain class, so to speak, someone that was courageous, someone that was willing to be a team player, someone that was willing to share the credit. And so these are like common values that any organization that is successful will have. And so I recently read that book. I read it last year, and I thought it was very insightful, and it was interesting because it took those lessons of sports and applied them to other organizations of life. And I think I've always believed that as human beings, we are social creatures, and we have this natural ability or natural desire to want to be in social groups. It's why we form communities of interest and everything else. And so there's always a question about how big that group gets before it becomes unresponsive and maybe tyrannical. But the point being, as social creatures, as human beings, we want to be around other people. We want to work with other people. And I think it makes us best as human beings when we're socializing or working with other people for a common goal, a common interest. And I think that there's something innate about our culture. And that's why I think you can take the lessons of sports and apply them to government or even private entities.
I couldn't agree more. Mark, I know you have a lot on your agenda today, and that's why I appreciate more the time you have spent with us tonight. As soon as we publish it, I'm forwarding you the link. Say best to your family from us here in Montenegro, and I'm hoping to see you here soon enough. Looking forward to see you here. Maybe I know that it wasn't possible this summer because of the virus, but I'm looking forward to seeing you here again next summer, maybe.
Ako Bog da, hvala puno.
Yeah. Have a beautiful weekend. See you soon. Bye-bye.
My best to everybody. Ciao.
Bye-bye.